despite what the haters say, despite what the wanton human rights violators say, your Moorish National Identification Card is not only identity, but it is real. It is evidence. Walk with me. What we're looking at here is the legal definition of the term identity in Black's Law Dictionary 7th edition. And the first definition of identity specifically states that the identical nature of two or more things, especially in patent law, the sameness in two devices of the function performed, the way it is performed, and the result achieved. Now, what two devices can we look at for that particular definition? Let's compare the Moorish National Identification Card with a state-issued identification card issued by one of the state of corporations. And they serve an identical nature even though they're two separate things. They have a sameness in device of their function performed, the way it is performed, and the result achieved. Both are used for identification purposes that have certain services rendered to you, and those services call for an identification card to be produced. And the Moorish National Identification Card serves the same exact purpose as the state identification card. And beyond that, let's go to definition 2. Definition 2 of identity specifically states evidence, the authenticity of a person or thing. Now, if you study, we know that we have natural persons and artificial persons, and we can lean in either direction, but we know right now we're specifically speaking about artificial persons. And we know that the state ID or the driver's license deals with artificial persons, while the Moorish National Identification Card specifically deals with organic persons, natural persons, the opposite of what the state ID is, right? So definition 2 of identity is evidence. So your national identification card is evidence of your identity, the authenticity of a person or thing. Now let's look at the legal definition of evidence. What we are now looking at is the legal definition of evidence in the Oxford Law Dictionary, 5th edition. And it goes on to specifically state, evidence is defined as that which tends to prove the existence or non-existence of some fact. It may consist of testimony, documentary evidence, real evidence, and when admissible, hearsay evidence. Now, let's focus on testimony evidence first, and then documentary evidence. Now, what is the testimony for Moors? Well, for Moors, when we are proclaiming and declaring our nationality and correcting our names, our appellations, what we are doing is making a counterclaim to the assumed and presumed jurisdiction that the state of corporations have over those who have been branded as Negro, blacks, and colors. And we are stating that we are not Negro, blacks, and colors, that we are actually a part of the human family, and we have a national descent name, and we are attached to a free national government. Simple as that, not to be treated as Negroes, blacks, and colors, and we have access to the full extent of the law, treaties and all, right? That is done via an affidavit, which is a declaration or a proclamation. And why we make affidavits is because we don't do oaths, we affirm. So an affirmation is our testimony. And then that testimony is made in the form of an affidavit, which becomes a document that is then recorded on the public record, whether it be at the county recorder or nationalnoticerecord.com. And then that document is giving a recorder number or a filing number, and we take that filing number or that recorder number when we are trying to procure a Moorish National Identification Card, and we use that recorder or filing number as an identification number on the Moorish National Identification Card. And that Moorish National Identification Card serves as another form of documentary evidence of other documentary evidence that is recorded on the public record, whether it be the county recorder or nationalnoticerecord.com. So therefore, we may have ignorant people in the world. Therefore, we may have people who hate us, who don't know the law, who don't study the law, and are willful and wanton human rights violators who want to follow us and badger us all over the internet and violate our human rights and yours. And a lot of the times, the reason why they're doing this is because if there are no more black people, then there can't be white people. But let's go on. Now, as I was saying earlier, the thing about being so-called African American is the term African specifically attaches you to the first man and woman who ever walked upright on the planet Earth. The first man and woman to establish civilization, governments, education, sciences, things of this nature, right? So being direct descendants of the first man and woman on Earth and sharing the exact physical phenotypical traits of your cousins, your brothers and sisters who are in Africa, the continent known as Africa right now today, that ties you back to the first man and woman on Earth, which means that if you are direct descendants of the first, you are Aboriginal, you are indigenous to the Earth. And despite, even if you have been placed on a slave ship, taken from Africa, brought over to America, right? You do not have to be forced to assimilate. You are still allowed to carry on with your African, Aboriginal, indigenous culture, norms, language, religion, forms of commerce with each other, forms of education, financial institutions, things of this nature. You do not have to assimilate. You do not have to carry colonial brand slave names that were placed on you as product names in order to sell you as property on the auction block. It is just as simple as that. You do have remedy and you are attached to the human family and you are Aboriginal and indigenous. Let's go on. So what we're looking at is the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, Article 2, where it specifically states here, indigenous peoples and individuals are free and equal to all other peoples and individuals and have the right to be free from any kind of discrimination in the exercise of their rights, in particular that based on their indigenous origin or identity. Let me read that again for those in the back, because we have a lot of those who feel threatened by us reaffirming and standing on our square about who we are, what our rights are, and how we want to identify. Article 2, United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, Human Rights. Indigenous peoples and individuals are free and equal to all other peoples, and individuals have the right to be free and free of any kind of discrimination in the exercise of their rights, in particular that based on their indigenous origin or identity. So the so-called United States already agrees on the alleged origin of so-called African Americans, which is right there in the brand name African. So that means that they have roots in the original peoples of Africa, which makes them Aboriginal and indigenous. Let's go on. Article 33, Section 1. Indigenous peoples have the right to determine their own identity. Indigenous peoples have the right to determine their own identity or membership in accordance with their customs and traditions. This does not impair the right of indigenous individuals to obtain citizenship of the states in which they live. Therefore, for those of you in the back who feel threatened by those who have been branded as Negro, Black, Colored, so-called African American, identifying with a so-called African term, which is Moor, which deals with so-called Africans, right? Then you have a problem and you are a human rights violator, and you really need to sit down and do some studying and do some soul searching. But for you Moors who are new and are on your journey, if you're looking to procure yourself a Moorish National identification card, you can definitely do that by clicking on one of the links below this video. We have 2 amazing offers available for you. Now, if you have documents that need to be recorded on the record, what you can do is pay to have us record your documents on our website, nationalnoticerecord.com. That will be the first link. And what you can do is, once you do that, we'll record your documents. We'll give you a national identification card for free. Or if you just need a national identification card, you can get one for $20. And that will be the second link available for you below this video. That's all I have to say. If you're interested in that, I look forward to seeing you on the other side. I hope you learned something in this video. I'm up out of here. Peace.